But on the physical plane proper, teaching in transmutation is desperately needed to curb increasing crime, juvenile delinquency, dope addiction, the whole array of nervous, emotional, and mental illnesses, and, most important of all, the delusion of death. The hierarchy and space people are waiting in readiness to send us as many teachers as needed to handle this situation. But the military power in every so-called civilized country, backed by a degenerate churchianity, have for several years refused to reveal to the public the truth about flying saucers. The highest government and church officials on the globe have been well informed about every angle of the flying saucer story for many years, but Big Brass sits back smugly and issues orders to jet fighter planes to fire on spacecraft. Meanwhile, tranquilizer pills may be obtained at the corner drugstore. This situation, now worldwide, constitutes the crucifixion ordeal for humanity at this time. Fashions in crucifixion methods change. In the day of Jesus, it was an officially approved physical act somewhat in the category of arena sports. In our time, the physical aspect is handled by judges, juries, and Ku Klux Klanners. Mental and emotional crucifixions, such as most of us are undergoing now, are usually handled by the neighbors. This is especially noticeable today in gossipy, insular communities where the natives have not yet felt the impact of the Aquarian Age. They are the modern laggards, following exactly in the footsteps of the first refugees from evolution. They are filled with the same identical resentments, the same hatreds, the same stupid rebellions against their Creator. They are as lazy as their predecessors, too, for they are the ones who are always whining and yakking about why doesn't God stop war? Well, He doesn't stop it because He didn't start it. God never interferes with the free will of His children, and if war is their ideal of fun, or intelligence, or beauty, then war they must have and will have until they have had their fill of blood and gore. Lately, though, since the space people have appeared on the Earth scene, the blame tossed out so freely by the whiners has shifted somewhat from God to interplanetary visitors. Why don't they stop war? The answer is the same. They cannot and will not interfere with our free will, our right to choose the path to destruction, or the path to enlightenment as individuals. However, at this time a balance has been struck, and the free will of the population as a whole can be considered, for now those on the side of the forces of light will soon far outnumber those who are supporting the forces of darkness. Thus it is the weight of worldwide public opinion that is now being balanced in the scales held by Portia, the goddess of justice. The lone individual still has freedom of choice. If he insists upon serving darkness rather than light, he may do so and live out his present embodiment with that decision. But he will not be permitted to incarnate again until he has transmuted his karmic burden sufficiently so that he will be able to see that serving the light in fellowship with his earth brothers is the wisest and most joyous course to pursue. The space people are here today, not to stop war, although war must be stopped, but to assist all those who wish to serve the light in full freedom, unhampered by a stupid economic system, by conniving political groups, or by competitive churchianity. God, being indivisible, cannot be divided up into little pieces and auctioned off to those with the most money in the collection box. It was known throughout the galaxy that by the year 1957, with the violet ray in full power, thousands upon thousands of Earth people would be ready for the light. It was known that these informed, vocal millions would speak the word of power, with their invocative demand for peace resounding throughout the cosmos. The entire galaxies and galaxies beyond have stood ready and waiting for this cosmic moment, ready to speed assistance to those who had placed their trust in God. The cosmic moment. Preparations for this cosmic moment on earth have been so stupendous and far-flung that they are quite beyond the grasp of the finite mind of an earth man, burdened as it is with astral debris. But we can select certain points of light in the human constellation. We can study these points of light, focus our full attention upon them. In this meditative way, illumination will come to us, joy will surge within us, gratitude and love will ray forth from us. Then swiftly, silently, the healing wings of peace will settle over us. In that instant, we will know that the dove has returned. Before the laggards came to earth, every individual rayed forth light like the true sun and S-O-N and S-U-N that he was. Light was his natural heritage, which he carried with him when he stepped forth as a spark, a white fire being, from Alpha and Omega. He had never known darkness. He had never known distress or limitation or pain. But as millions of years dragged by on leaden feet after the laggards came, only rarely did an individual on planet Earth radiate forth light from his aura. There have always been a few disciples in the outer world who have caught and held the vision of light, protected and sustained by the hierarchs of the rays, who constitute the Christ forces within the spiritual hierarchy. Very, very few of these hierarchs have been earthmen. They were all brought in from other planets until quite recently. During the past few hundred years, a few earthmen and women have graduated and have been appointed to posts as masters of the ageless wisdom and Kohans of the rays. Many of these are well known to us historically, but when we examine the records, we find that the total number shrinks considerably because the same person has had many embodiments. In a world which vibrated to pain and fear, a disciple whose task it was to externalize the perfection of the Father had a rough time holding his peace and poise and harmony. His state of consciousness had to be held steady in the light without the slightest wavering. He had to reject appearances as untrustworthy. He not only had to raise the vibration of his own atoms to a frequency that would ward off disease and disharmony of all kinds, but they had to dispel the delusion of death. He had to learn these things during many embodiments, and yet live what seemed to be a normal life so far as the neighbors were concerned. That is why the total number of initiates is small, because we find the same individual back in embodiment again and again. For an example, El Morya, present Kohan of the first ray, was in embodiment as Sir Thomas More, Chancellor of the Excelsior under Henry VIII of England. Later we find him back in embodiment as the Irish poet Thomas Moore. These were only two of his many incarnations, and still later in history he graduated into the ranks of the initiates, the illumined ones who served the Christ forces. Katumi, Kohan of the second ray until July 1958, was known to us long ago as Pythagoras, yet in recent times he was in embodiment as St. Francis of Assisi. So as we look down the great corridors of history, we see many points of light on which we might focus. But the story of St. Francis, for instance, would not be the complete story. It would give us but one small clue to the spiritual giant, Katumi, as he is today. We like to think that we know and understand so very much about Jesus and Mary and Joseph. Yet there are very few persons who have even a smattering of correct information.